Hello, I'd like to call to order the November board meeting of the Ramsey-Washington Metro Watershed District. Before we get started and approve the agenda, I just wanted to clarify a couple of items on the agenda because this board packet was really well put together with a lot of important information in it. And so as I went through talking over things with Tina, I think this is just an important note for us to keep in mind. So section 10, going on, what are the themes, what are the actions, how do I internalize it? Consider A through C more for information. It's really great information to have as it becomes important when you think about the cost benefit later. So if you have questions, we're going to focus that section less so on the presentation, more so if you have questions, so we can have the conversation. And if there's big meaty topics, I'd like to use the discussion section for next month to maybe dive into deeper areas. The reason being is because we have a really important high priority item within the administrative report that we're going to want to cover. The second thing I wanted to highlight is from D to F. Those items are within budget and are all scope summaries, and it's also for your information. So just to be very clear, it's already in budget and it's for information. So if you have questions about that, perfectly reasonable, let's have them out. But again, it's there's not really a decision required on any of those topics from A to F. We're just wanting to ensure that you're well informed, and I really thank the staff for setting it up in that way. So before we move to approve the agenda, I believe Stephanie, you wanted to have something removed from the consent agenda.
Yes, I could have the permit program I-2449 Tanner's Lake Development.
That would be wonderful, kid. Let's plan to move that down to 5C 2449. Is that okay in the permit section? Wonderful. Any other changes to the consent agenda as requested? Wonderful. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda with the removal of 2449 permit program?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. All abstain say abstain. Wonderful. Moving forward to the consent agenda, again, we can we're going to approve all of these in one sweep, but we can have a discussion before we finalize. So do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved. Seconded.
Wonderful. Discussion. I have just one question with respect to the street sweeping. Could you help me understand, is that in addition to the 250 we already allocated, or this is the remaining?
Yes.
Okay, that one was just a little confusing the way it was written. So this is just saying, hey, they're coming in, they need 100. It's topping our budget.
And it's available.
Yeah, it is available. Okay, that's really the question that I had.
And I had questions on 1 and 5 on the pervious pavement ones. In those two projects for Casa Piano and Redeemer Lutheran Church, is maintenance included in that?
Maintenance is not included in the initial grant cost.
So just a question, I remember just as a, I understand that the longevity of those is generally 20, 30 years, unless the big problem is that they fill up with sediment or silt. And so vacuum maintenance is required. So my question is, how do they ensure? Do they know that?
Yeah, for the most part, those landowners have already worked really closely with the contractors to get a bid and get an estimate, and they are familiar with what they're installed with, the pervious pavers and the concept. I would expect to probably see maintenance grants from them in the future. And then, but yeah, as far as longevity, they're familiar with it. And then I do inspections every year to make sure that they're being maintained. And I'll give them feedback if I see any kind of maintenance needs.
Okay. Okay. And so one last question, not related to, but I do applaud these large projects like for the church and things like that. I think that's really wonderful kind of opportunity for outreach. In that opportunity, can we extend that to go beyond as one of the things for maintenance on those pervious or permeable pavements, no salt, maybe a reduction in their salt use, specifically on those areas, but maybe even further to their congregation, just a query.
Yeah, I can reach out to them. The one, the Redeemer Church does have a CAC member on it. So that's Gary's. So, the church is well informed and has done some other projects as well. So,
No, I appreciate that.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Thank you, Stephanie. Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. All abstain say abstain.
Yes. Sorry.
Just didn't hear it. Just double checking. Wonderful. Moving forward to visitor comments.
I don't think we have any
Anybody?
visitors, everybody is staff on the call.
Wonderful. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it to Nicole. It's up to you, Nicole, if you want to cover 5C 2449 first versus others, your call, but your section.
Yeah, why don't we start with the permit application? It's 24-49, development on the west side of Tanner's Lake. It's about 3.5 acres. I don't believe, no, we probably don't have any board members, but just an FYI, the board has previously approved a permit for this site. It was probably 6 years ago and it just never got constructed. So now a new developer is coming in proposing another residential type development on this site. They're proposing to decrease impervious area on the site by about 1/3 of an acre and proposing a number of both stormwater treatment and flood compensatory storage facilities for the site, as well as a walkway, elevated boardwalk along the lake shore. I will say they're working with the city of Oakdale to ensure that their city shoreland ordinances are being met. That's also in consultation with the DNR. And then I anticipate DNR Public Waters permitting for anything below the OHW of the lake, like dock or if any part of that boathouse is proposing to extend below the OHW. We have also visited the site and they've received a WACA no wetland determination for the parcel. So there are no jurisdictional wetlands on the site, but I can take questions.
Thank you, Nicole. The reason I was interested in learning more about this is because of our conversation last board meeting. So in your enforcement report, you actually highlighted the underground inspection case for Chick-fil-A and mentioned how difficult, perhaps the challenges of out of sight, out of mind, and perhaps the issues with, in that case, I believe it was ownership had changed, and then the new owner didn't realize that they were responsible for maintenance. Again, I'm going to highlight, I was just had the opportunity to tune into the recent Minnesota Stormwater Seminar that Andy Erickson gave about the updated BMP maintenance guide. And at that time, someone asked him what's the biggest issue, and it was sediment, specifically in underground systems. So my question begs the question of, and Lauren had chimed in as well last time, as I recall, that what the question was, how can we ensure that the owner is capable and is aware of how to maintain these? Because it's, I don't know, is it a closed or what do you call it, contained system? So maybe a secondary difficulty, and then also, again, out of sight, out of mind. So that's the only reason I brought it up is what do we have in place to make sure that this is an effective stormwater treatment system?
Yeah, absolutely. The developer has already submitted a signed maintenance agreement, which is sort of a boilerplate template to say that they will maintain and inspect their own facilities, and that the district can come in and inspect and even actually maintain facilities for them and bill it back to them. So that's kind of the more general document that we have for every private development. But then we also have a very site-specific operations and maintenance plan, which covers the above ground and the below ground facilities. So we'll be requiring, they have already submitted one, but it already needs to be updated. So that document is essentially meant to be a living, breathing document that gets handed over to the owner, and that's communicated at permit closure time. So the agreement goes with the land. The O&M plan is meant to describe what maintenance is required and at what intervals, and then kind of describe and document which structures they need to be inspecting and cleaning sediment out from. So that'll be incorporated in the O&M agreement for all the above ground, but also the below ground facilities as well. And like you mentioned, it is more difficult both to explain the maintenance requirements for underground systems and to make sure that property owners are aware that they exist, because like you said, out of sight, out of mind, and it requires, usually that someone is hired to actually vacuum out those structures for sediment removal. So it'll be added to our closed permit inspection list as well. And so staff will do inspections long term, but at permit closeout time, that O&M plan is really vital in that it's updated, it's site specific, and that essentially anyone could pick it up and really kind of understand what is required, not just a civil engineer or someone that might have built the system, but really like a property manager, landscape maintenance person can really pick up that document and have everything that they need. And then also they can contact us as well.
Yeah, I mean, my questions are all aimed at how do we make sure that your job is not more challenging than it needs to be? And that's
Yeah.
really what I'm meaning.
Right. That O&M plan was not always a requirement, but because we were seeing these issues, we really wanted these detailed documents to say, like, this is, we use them too for inspection because every site's different. Every system is designed, every proprietary system is different. So it's really useful for our staff as well. So we used to not require these detailed O&M plans, but that was born out of the difficulties we were having for these long-term inspection and then communicating with those property owners about what's required of them.
I had one question on that permit as well. Could you help me understand, so the DNR process of approval and its relationship with this permit? If the DNR says, you can't do anything above or below the, what is this?
OHW.
Thank you, OHW. That doesn't have any, how does that impact this permit? I assume there isn't an impact, but I just wanted to double check.
Yeah, outside of the floodplain, we obviously regulate the floodplain elevation, but the OHW and lakeward of that line is DNR jurisdiction. So it would fall under their public waters permitting requirements. But the DNR also worked with the city of Oakdale as late as 2023, early 2024 in adopting the shoreland ordinance for the city of Oakdale, which specifically calls out this development as well. So the DNR had an additional interaction with this project specifically because when they were developing and adopting their shoreland ordinance for the city, this development was already kind of on the horizon. So I've been in communication with the DNR hydrologist as well to just make sure, like, was this the intent? Is this looking like there's any non-starters here? Because we certainly don't want to propose something for your approval that is going to get scrapped. So thus far, I've not heard any issues from the DNR or from the city of Oakdale on what they're proposing currently. Obviously, if that does happen down the road and it results in a major change, we would bring it back to you. But all signals I'm getting is it's been reviewed by all agencies, and the city of Oakdale ultimately regulates and administers their own shoreline ordinance. So for their permits, those requirements will have to be met.
Thank you. That clarifies it well. So I think we need to move to approve permit 2449. Do I have a motion to approve permit 2449?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. All abstain say abstain. Okay, after you, Nicole, do you want to keep going on the enforcement action report?
Yeah, let me just get to the right page. So I guess the theme of our inspections this month was it started raining again. So we've been dealing with some sites and their need to dewater from their site. So we've been working closely with a number of sites on their dewatering plans. I think I've mentioned this in previous meetings, but you have like a long dry period and people just expect it's never going to rain again, which we're always kind of like scratching our heads at that. But so a bit of a scramble for these dewatering plans. So that's been a challenge. Although we're happy for the rain, we've been waiting on a number of sites for vegetation growth, and that's been very difficult with the drought. But every kind of weather brings its own challenges. We were able, fortunately, to close quite a number of permits this month, due in part to the tenacity of Mary, our regulatory specialist. Oftentimes we send permit closeout checklists to folks, and maybe there's some pretty minor administrative items that we're waiting on, like as-built plans, vegetation growth, things like that. And then it's just like a drawn out process for reasons unbeknownst to us. So some of those projects are older that have been complete for quite a long time. We've just been repeatedly bugging them to turn in these last couple items. Sometimes it's even like confirming an address for the escrow check. That takes a long time. So Mary has been doing a good job this fall of trying to get these permit applicants to close out these permits with us. So that's good. Gets it off of our inspection list and then moves to another inspection list. So then it'll move to the closed permit BMP inspections. So we'll certainly be visiting these sites again, but we're happy to be able to close permits and refund escrows. And then some project updates. We just figured it was of special note of the Shoreview Villas development, which is on Snail Lake. It's a large development, has a lot of eyes on it. So we've been working closely with the city of Shoreview on inspections. Thankfully, we've seen good compliance this last month that they've been starting to grade and remove trees and do demolition activities. So that's been good. And we have coordinated with the city so that either the watershed or the city is inspecting on alternate weeks. We know this is a very special parcel because it's on a lake, and again, a lot of eyes on this project. So we just want to make sure that we are coordinating on those inspections so that someone's looking at it at least once a week. But yeah, so far they've been in compliance. And then towards the end of the enforcement report is another underground closed permit BMP sort of success story. Mary wrote this story about finding a sinkhole while they were doing an inspection at a very old permit site, so a 2002 permit site, that resulted in a discharge of sediment to Coleman Creek. And then she kind of goes into what it took to find the right contact, to get that sinkhole repaired, and then ultimately to get the creek cleaned out. So she was intentional, I think, about the level of detail on how that process went, just to illustrate that sometimes the wheels of maintenance turn slow, but just keeping up with following up with folks and just being tenacious about figuring out who we need to be talking to get these things done. And then ultimately it's worth it to have that good outcome, but it's not always super quick. and involves, certainly some staff time on our end. Any questions?
No, just kudos to Mary. That was pretty impressive.
Yeah.
I totally agree. For information, Nicole, if I was curious about understanding more about WACA and the designations that come through, is that something that I should address to you offline or ask Tina about offline? I'll do that. I'm seeing more of these and I appreciate raising awareness. I just have some questions.
Yeah, I certainly could put together a memo describing different WACA applications or decisions that we get, and just kind of explain, what a no loss is, what an exemption is.
Yeah, definitely interested in the exemption. I've seen a few of those come through, but not
Sure.
needing to take time here. I just wanted to make you aware and reach out to Tina.
Yeah, sounds good.
This is awesome. Thank you for, again, kudos to closing the permits and everything as well.
Yeah, feels good to get them off the list. So.
And it rained again. Yeah. It's the quote I'm going to write down. Thank you very much. Let's go toward Paige. I don't think you have anything new except for the budget update, huh? Ashley, we're going to look to Ashley. Look at this delegation.
Yeah, so the budget status update is on page 58. You'll see that remaining allocation is pretty low. And so we have had to tell a few folks that we're bumping you into the next year, which works out well because that's when they're planning to do the projects as well. So I guess noting a couple highlights, those big pervious pavers, those cost a little bit of money. So those are a heavy hitter this month. Otherwise, yeah, I'll take any questions. If there's anything that sticks out to folks.
I made an assumption reading the grant programs and the consent agenda that most of that construction happens next year. Is that a fair?
Some of the pervious is going in this fall yet.
Oh,
They're
okay.
slamming them in.
They're
but-
still going. Okay,
Real tight.
I was curious. It doesn't
Yeah.
end where I think I was just curious.
Yep, no, that's if they weren't this year yet, we probably would have asked a couple of them to
Good bump.
bump to the next year, but
Yeah, I wanted to compliment you and for that matter, Paige, you carried this for much of the year. Y'all actually came, taking this is a fairly substantial budget and taking it down to, that
To the one.
to the end there. I was really impressed, and the fact that you're saying that there have already been applicants that you said, we're gonna slide you into next year, really, to me, says that that's good planning, good management overall. So I think that these grants are in great shape.
and I will note, we'll be providing a program update at the next board meeting too. So we'll be touching on kind of what we saw this year, what we're expecting next year, and our kind of thoughts on the program overall. So.
And so that remaining 11,000 plus, does that roll into next year's budget essentially, or is it something that if the right project came up, across your desk, we could still spend yet this year? I mean, how does that work?
It is mostly already accounted for.
Okay, can you say a little bit?
So a little bit of how we are tracking is a little bit different. So there is actually already a couple more things that are gonna come in from the technical services side with the Ramsey County and Washington Conservation Districts that will use up the last of that.
So that comes to consultant fees on the table, so that's,
Hmm.
they were telling me that, Ramsey County has like 40 some projects on the list of people that are wanting more work, so we're.
Bump them into next year.
So some of it, yeah, he'll continue through December, but yeah, a lot of it will be for next year's.
It'd be just testing the temperature, but it feels like we're back to pre-COVID requests when it comes to grants. And so at least how it feels. So it'd be interesting to
Yeah.
hear next month as it goes, because we were down for quite a while, so now it's feeling good.
Yeah, I think during COVID, we had a lot more residential projects,
Yeah.
so there was, you know, the smaller
Little
ones,
smaller ones,
right?
yeah.
So we had a lot of projects, but maybe not
Yeah,
as much.
not as much money spent, yeah. Oh, this one's healthy, it's healthy, good job.
Yeah.
Any further questions? Ashley? Thank you very much. Now we get to the action items. There's two things that I do believe need board action on, so I'll pass it to you, Tina.
Yeah, so Brandon, I think will walk us through the 2025 CIP maintenance and repair project for this year. This is an annual project, as you know, this is something that you see every November, so I'll just let you take it away.
Yep, that's right. This is our annual project. Each November you see we bring the preliminary plans to you with board action. It's a request to review preliminary plans and ultimately authorization to go and solicit bids. The way that the cadence of this project works is that we would bring those bids back to you at the next board meeting for your approval with the intent to get a contractor on board so that they could start working in January of next year. A number of these pond cleanout projects, it's more efficient for them to start working when the ground is frozen and they can access some of these areas. So after the request for board action sort of cover letter, there are three things attached to it. The first is a summary sheet of the sites that are included in the CIP this year, the associated costs for those sites. Point out the rows C1 through C5, those are watershed district sites who are maintaining infrastructure sites that we operate, whereas the following sites, these are on cleanout locations, sediment removal locations where different community cities have come to the watershed and have requested these sites to be included as part of the CIP. So these are the sites where the district will get reimbursed for those costs that are associated at those locations. And then you can see the breakdown towards the bottom of that page, both in terms of the total cost and then the reimbursable cost as the preliminary design is laid out. The next two pages are just the cover sheet for the technical specifications. So it gives you a sense of what direction we're providing to the contractor for to support the CIP. And then following the cover letter for the technical specifications is the preliminary plan set as it sits today. So as I mentioned, those couple of sites, we get requests that come from the city. Bar and Dave in particular are working with the cities. We pull the preliminary design together, come up with quantities and an estimate, and we share that with the cities, and we get their okay that yep, they want to go forward with that scope, or maybe once they see the design, they want to adjust the scope, remove less sediment in some cases, something to that effect. So as we get those final approvals from the city, that the final cost share, that scope will change just a little bit, but the number of sites and the overall concept here is fairly dialed in.
The only
walk through each site, but Dave, if there's anything to add, please jump in here.
The only change that the city of Woodbury asked for a few yards, about 1,000 yards to be removed. Well, cut in half. That would be on C14 for the pond SC 235. Instead of removing 2,500 yards, they asked to cut that down about 1,000 yards, so they have a little bit more money to spend next year on the same program to do a couple other ponds. So that's about really the only change. Everybody else is on board.
Could I ask you to do a 2-minute tangent on the selection for these, how they were selected?
The ponds. Or
Just the high level again, just to refresh. You don't have to give the full details. I just wanted to refresh your.
Yeah, I think so. There's two, I put them into two groups, right? The 1 through 5 are the ones that's infrastructure that we own or maintain. And those, Dave and bar staff go and do those inspections to identify if maintenance is needed. And the outcome of those inspections is
This prioritization.
this priority, this list. The second group is 6 through 14, thank you. Those are sites that where the cities come to us and say, hey, we have this need, can we participate in your program? Perfect.
So I have a question. So kind of unrelated to the actual work, but if I remember reading down below, it said that you had like the largest number of pond cleanout requests to date, and it kind of came out of this presentation, you think, to the city engineers conference. So my question, the first question is, what was the aha that kind of sparked that huge request? I mean, did they not know about this before?
I think that was my presentation usually. And I think it was, yeah, some people I think they knew, but it was, yeah, maybe sparked their interest again. And there was also Woodbury staff at that presentation, so they were able to kind of talk up the program.
Sure.
Yeah, because they had done it a few times, so I think that helped a lot.
We've been doing this for, I don't know, about what, 5 or 6 years now for it. And every year we've always kind of gotten onesie twosies. But this one, we had every city on here had a request of probably 4 to 5, 6 ponds to look at to start with. And then this is kind of the funnel down after the homework on that stuff. So it's just it's been a slow build, but I think that presentation helped, and maybe some trickle down and some word of mouth potentially.
Yeah, no.
And I think too, seeing how nobody else offers a program like this, so that I know of or that I heard about there, so seeing like, oh, this is like an opportunity you should take advantage of.
Well, I mean, I just wanted to know what it was, because I wanted to, give you a pat on the back and maybe like say, oh, yeah, we did something kind of cool.
Yeah.
That's really neat. And then the second question I have is, I understand, are the pond cleanouts any risk beyond, like, I know I see there's an appendix where you did some soil kind of analysis, sediment analysis. Any big surprises, any concerns that we're gonna have like huge disposal costs?
Well, the reason,
Likely.
go ahead, Dave.
Oh, I'm sure likely not. No reason to think of that right now. We haven't got the complete sample and analysis back, but for how they grade it and for how back bar goes and looks at past bids and previous projects, no concerns, at least at this time.
Okay, so nothing
Brandon, I guess I'd
unusual
defer
with
to
sediment.
Correct.
That's right. There's nothing, the intent with the sediment cores is so that the contractor has information so that they know how they have to dispose of it. And the cost increases when it has to go to a landfill.
Yeah.
So they have to pay for that disposal cost. And so the sediment cores here lets them have that information so that they can account for that in their bid.
Okay.
And
But no.
we're building in similar costs there for previous years. Expect to see a big difference in those contractor bids.
And all of these costs assume that all sediment needs to go to a landfill. So say if one of the sediment samples come back where it can be disposed of on site or a tier 1, that could be an option, and then that could lower the cost. But right now it's just better to assume kind of high and just get rid of the sediment out of the clean and just get it gone and dispose of it properly, and then we can go from there.
Thanks.
Yeah, because these bids aren't your 90% bids yet. Is that correct? Or they are that?
These are.
These are the 90%.
These are the 90% bids. We will adjust the engineer's estimate down based on the revised quantities
Yeah,
from
when they start.
the city.
Oh,
Yeah.
gotcha.
So when we finalize our plans, but then we'll release it for bid and we'll get the contractor bid results will come next month.
Good.
On the bids, there's, essentially, there's quite a range in terms of the cost for the projects, and I'm assuming that the cost of removal, trucking, and disposal is the same across all projects or very near. Is that a fair assumption?
In terms
Yes.
of projects or sites, I mean, I think there is a range when you look at projects, right? But for sites, we would expect to see a fairly tight range when we're bidding it together, because the contractors can be using similar equipment. They're presumably going to do a similar disposal site, so that we would anticipate they'd be very similar for each of the sites.
So then essentially the difference across these different projects is largely their size. If they're,
Yeah, the amount.
Yeah, oh, yes,
amount of
the
removal.
amount of sediment, the volume of sediment that's the primary driver for the cost of recycling.
I suspected,
Mhm.
just wanted to
Yes.
make sure. And then the kind of aha the public works folks have had, at least in this year, is we've been doing this for several years, and maybe there's some staff turnover, maybe we kind of clunked them in the head and reminded them whatever it might have been. I'm curious if we've had a sense of there are other projects in the pipeline that the cities have already kind of said, well, we'd probably like to do this one and this, here's our list of priorities. And it kind of goes back to Val's question, how were these particular projects selected? And if there is a process to also be kind of planning for the future in making these decisions, or if it's just a flat one time, okay, this is what came in. Just trying to get a little better understanding of how this kind of works.
The city, is required to inspect their ponds every 5 years, or 20% a year. And then at some point they prioritize, based on how much funding they have available for that kind of work. So I'm assuming that's how they select, do we have the funds to do that this year? But they have long lists, I'm sure, every pond in their city that, they probably have a prioritization.
And we had some conversation about this in discussion in a previous meeting, probably last year.
Mhm.
And I seem to remember that there's a database that we may have that we've worked.
We have our pond prioritization study.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And is that factored in to this each year?
So, we have that study that prioritizes, in terms of which ponds could you get your biggest bang for your buck for a clean out. Now, some of the ponds that the cities are managing are at a much smaller level, much finer level of detail. So we share those, results. Those results are available, but they're also looking at a data set that has those ponds plus another subset, and they're weighing how to proceed with their spending their maintenance costs or dollars.
Is it,
So we inform their prioritization, because they're the ones who come to us with these particular requests, right? At least that's where I'm
yeah,
gathering.
that would be a good
Yeah.
process.
I think Dave shared that prioritization with them again, right? So like we're reminding them, that we have this information available.
That's correct. And then I don't know if we've done a couple of those ponds over the years that are on that study, but I don't know if that would be an end all be all of, it's a nice driver, but if there's other problem ponds that they have or full ponds that didn't make that study per se, we still clean them out. There's still benefit to it.
What's the interaction between, again, this is kind of selection, that whole process. What's the interaction between, I'm suggesting maybe our interest is largely in more on water quality. We may be thinking a little bit broader in terms of downstream effects, whereas I'm assuming, and it may be an incorrect assumption, but that the cities may be thinking more in terms of flood control and just the amount of sediment that is accumulated. So there are different drivers here, and what's the intersection between those from our maybe more water quality generated interest based against their interest, because largely, if it's not a project that we own and manage ourselves, what I'm hearing, largely, we're responding to or responsive to the projects the cities come to us with. And, is there a way to kind of nudge them, or?
Yeah, so there's certainly gonna be a dialogue. In this instance here, when we're talking about sediment cleanout, our priorities sort of align with water quality. This is material that when you look at a pond, it's below the water level. So this storage volume, when they remove this sediment, it increases the permanent pool storage volume. It increases retention time, improves water quality. There's not a flood risk reduction benefit for removing this sediment. So truly the intention, the benefit out of these projects is water quality. So that's where their goals and our goals of water quality align.
But yet there is a increase in the volume capacity of the pond, isn't there?
For the permanent pool volume, yes.
Just trying to understand this,
Mhm.
how this
Yeah.
works.
Yep.
So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Just one minor thing too, I think it's on one of the attachments on page 80. The drawing number is incorrect. It's marked for Coleman Lake Outlet. It says C4 on the map. I think it's C12. And I was looking for the street name, County Road 23. I don't know is that correct? I couldn't locate it on a Google map.
Gareth and I did a quick page turn this afternoon where we changed a couple edits and some of those little details on stuff. And there's a couple access points that we wanted to look at a little bit closer. So, yeah.
I was just wondering if it was another road name.
Yeah, what is the other name for County Road 23?
It's County Road C.
Oh, County Road
Yeah.
C.
Just out of curiosity.
Okay.
There was a last minute sheet reshuffle to get the watershed, the maintenance projects for the infrastructure that the watershed owned all grouped together in terms of sheet count. So they got jumbled up there, but we'll get it corrected here before it goes out for sure.
Yeah, these are 90% plans.
Yes.
Yeah. Full page turn.
Yes.
And when they would go for bid, are those bids all of the single package, or can bidders say, well, I'm interested in this one? All or none?
We would bid it as a single project,
Yeah.
all the sites as a single project.
My only comment is, as we discussed last time, in terms of the lessons learned from earlier bids coming in, that if you receive the bids, at least help us next board meeting flag things that are of interest for us to discuss, just to try out that process as we go. That would be the only request I have in addition to this. This is great. Do I have an action to approve the preliminary designs, estimated costs, and proposed project schedules, direct staff to finalize the design and bidding documents, and advise the project for bid?
So moved. Second.
Wonderful. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. All opposed say nay. All abstain say abstain. Wonderful. Jumping to the approval to distribute watershed management plan notification letter.
Yeah, this is an action item that I guess officially kind of kicks off the plan review process. It is part of a statute requirement that this gets sent to our plan review agencies and city county authorities, neighboring watersheds and conservation districts. So you see that there's two different memos that we would send out. The one to city officials and staff also includes will include an online survey that will basically just ask them for their initial input. And then we can take that information, and as we meet with them over the next year, then we have that information of what's at the top of their mind. but it certainly is not the only time that we'll be soliciting input from them. That's just the initial ask, I guess, to start the conversations.
I have a couple, go ahead. Couple questions.
Yeah.
So on the memorandum from Barb,
Mhm.
just at the bottom below that blue highlighted area, the question is, why do we care that the city's relationship with BW?
I was wondering that exact same
Valley
Valley
Branch.
Branch.
I think
Is that
Walmart
just a
represents
leftover?
both and they missed it.
Just-
Oh, okay.
I thought
Thank
that
you.
was like,
I
oh,
was
they
like, what is
missed
this?
the autocorrect there.
Wait, which one, on which?
It's on that.
the second line.
Memorandum page, it's at the very bottom.
Yeah.
All right, and then, and then the second one, there is everything looks good for me, for the letter, but there is a typo on the survey.
Yep.
Yeah, we got that.
And then I do have a question.
Yeah.
So one, would we be able to see the online survey?
Yep,
Just,
the results.
oh, no.
Oh,
the
the survey
question,
itself?
The
Yeah.
question, yeah.
Yeah.
Just to see
Yeah.
what they're asking, or what you're asking of the
Sure.
city, and is it different from what the public sees? Because I've already seen kind of the public facing survey for South Washington. I'm like
Oh,
just kind of curious.
yeah, it will be quite different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I figured.
Yep.
And then the last question I think I have here is, as you're seeking input from the different cities, from the different partners, and then from diverse communities, I guess my question is, how do you know you've reached your goals of reaching all of those folks? And what if one person responds? Are you gonna tag them? Do you know what I mean?
I mean, so I'll put cities and counties in a whole different bucket than the diverse, our diverse residents. I mean, so we're gonna come back with a whole plan for outreach for residents.
Well, I'm
Yeah.
just looking at the groups that you've identified
Oh,
here, so
I see what you're
if,
saying.
you are looking for every city to is that the
Well,
expectation, every city? will
Every
respond?
city is given the opportunity to respond.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alright.
Yeah, but we can't, I mean, so, and like I said, this is only one step, right? So then we actually, for our public works forum meeting where we bring them all together. Not every city will attend that, but, we'll hit some there too. So that's another opportunity. And then they'll be part of our TAC process as well, our technical advisory committee process. And so we'll have input from them through the whole 3-year period.
Are there any concerns about, are there some groups that may not have enough staff to participate, or just wondering?
I think that they're pretty used to this process, so I think we'll hear from,
Okay.
I should say that, we'll hear from, especially the ones where we have a large land area, we might not hear from Gem Lake, right? For instance, where we only have one square of development.
Okay.
I'm not sure that we would necessarily hear from them, and they also do not have staff, right? The mayor is usually the one that responds to items like that, but sometimes we do. So.
Well, I think to build on these, I had some line of questions in around making sure that we do follow up at least once
Mhm.
additional,
Yeah.
which I think
Yeah.
we do. I just,
Mhm.
I also had questions if you could help me understand how we involve like, citizen associations in this process. I believe my assumption was in the engagement and partner community events, we would engage, for example, if certain lake associations
Yep.
are interested, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, Lauren is working with our staff to develop a comprehensive plan for outreach for our communities, so
Yeah.
you'll see that again.
Yeah, that, which is
Yeah.
really important. So I just
Yeah.
wanted to make sure that, I know we saw the whole plan, I think it was 2 board meetings ago, and I just had questions on it.
Yeah, I've been talking with Lauren about engaging with maybe some facilitators too for those outreach.
Yeah, that would be awesome. There was a couple of good examples of the last year's Minnesota watersheds where they talked through the outreach
Mhm.
strategies, and having a facilitator seems very beneficial. Good questions. just reading my other question. Why just Valley Branch?
Yeah.
I don't
Sorry
understand.
about that.
Oh, no, it's okay.
Gonna catch it.
The, well, we can't catch every type of
Yeah.
work. That's why there's many eyes on it, right? So
Right.
I'm curious as we think through the workshops, I know the plan and the timeline that we're doing is specifically with our Ramsey staff workshop and then some of the boardwalk workshop stuff. Have we made progress on actually looking at the lessons learned, maybe in addition to issues, but like here's some learned lessons or things that have changed in the last 10 years that we need to take into account? I assume that's what that means, but I didn't want to make the assumption.
Yeah, well, we did the gaps analysis and that
Yeah,
there was.
That
a
was
lot
like
of lessons
a while ago.
learned up
Yeah.
there, but that's where some of the issue identification started, I would say.
I just wanted to make sure that we're not just looking at issues, we're looking at some of those gaps and we're looking
Yeah,
at those other
yep,
things. Okay.
yep.
That was important.
Yeah, I think the gaps lead to the issue, to where we need to focus on some of our efforts.
And I think I mentioned this last time we were there as we form our technical advisory committee, which I think is super important. I think it would be of benefit to maybe have a rotating board member attend some of those occurrences, if at all possible. I don't know when they'll be held, but getting closer there and understanding and listening, I think helps bring perspective. So, last comment that I have. So, going to the top, do we have a motion?
Yeah, I didn't, I thought you had something.
Yeah.
Before you go to the motion, my only comment was similar to Val's. I'm sure you're thinking about it, but any way to bring managers to the public events or the
Oh, yeah, for
TAC
sure.
meetings
Yeah.
where we can be involved and back to Stephanie's comment of how do we know we've reached these people, being involved on the ground through these processes really helps your perspective. So
Absolutely.
any
Yep.
way we can be there for that, I know I'm willing, I'm sure I'll do that.
Oh, yeah, you'll definitely be involved in this, yeah.
Yeah, this is a great time to talk to some of the constituents and other people that we help serve. So I think this is great. Wonderful. Okay, so just to make sure that I summarize, we'll have some follow-ups if we have important areas that we need to ensure are participating, and then we'll have options there. Thank you. Do I have a motion to authorize staff to distribute the notification letter to the required plan review authorities and agencies?
So moved.
Second.
Wonderful. Further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Abstain say abstain. Okay, it's passed. All right, jumping to attorney report, Tracy.
Yeah, well, and I'm gonna age myself, Tina, is that our third 10-year rendition of the plan? Is this starting our fourth?
Probably, I think this might be our 5th generation plan.
Wow, I remember when it was first required and those 10 years should go fast.
Yeah.
It's like, here we go. Yeah, it's wonderful. Thanks you guys for having me tonight. You'll be seeing more of me. Lauren is expecting to have her baby next month and I will be here for probably the next 6 months. So it'll be a little more continuity with me knowing a little more. But I'm reporting really what Lauren did last month. She worked on publishing the aerator notice that happens every fall to make sure everybody's put on notice that water may not be frozen solid due to our aerator. She reviewed a few access agreements. She revised the volunteer liability waiver for volunteers who participate in the water quality projects, including minors. It's funny, we just use those things and every once in a while it just needs another set of eyes to just say, okay, is it updated? And then she's just reporting that really things are going somewhat slowly for the Fish Creek restoration. We're working on getting easements. We have one from one landowner who's interested. The other 3 haven't been that responsive. And, Dave could weigh in, but he talked to Lauren today about whether we need those other easements or if we can keep going with the project without them. So a little bit busy month from our end, but if there's any questions, probably really Lauren's going to know more until I get dig deeper in for the next couple of months. But that's what she was working on this month.
Do you want to?
No,
Okay.
I think that's good.
All right, thanks, Tracy.
Oh yeah, thanks you guys.
Unless other people have questions on Fish Creek, I don't need that to take over. It's always just nice to see both of their faces. Wonderful.
Thank you.
Oh, exciting, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
another new one. I'm trying to put
Yeah.
not ask too many questions about it. but-
I know, no, very exciting. It's different, you know, you'd think the grandma would be watching the baby, but instead I'm covering her workload. So, you know. Welcome to our world.
And for board discussion topics, I don't believe any were submitted this time around. But as I had started at the beginning, we want to use that particular board discussion topic if during the information questions, if there's a really meaty thing that we want to tackle, let's be proactive and plan something for next as we review A through F for the new reports and presentations. As I jump, so if there's any board discussions, let me know. Go ahead and feel free to elevate. Not this month, which is fine because we have a lot to review in the new reports presentations. Just to remind again, this is all for information. It's really valuable information, and so let's focus on it being driven by questions that we have through the different sections as we walk through. I'm trying out something a little bit new this time. So for each of those, I had kind of crafted what I had assumed was the outcome for the information. Thought that might be a nice way to settle. And if you guys aren't aligned, that's probably where we should talk. So so the Ramsey-Washington 10A project cost benefit analysis, that's really trying to establish the dollars per TP range of value from our projects. That's really the information that we have presented. And then let's open it up for questions from there. Any questions on 10A?
I do. It was nice charts, thank you. But I still felt a little ungrounded. It might help me if we could if you could anchor it with maybe a placement of a couple of actual BMP. You know, like an example of this was, you know, like Maplewood Mall, just because it's next on the list.
Yeah.
All right. So, I mean, it doesn't matter which ones, but it just helps me understand maybe successful ones and maybe even, yeah. So that was my only comment.
It's a really good idea. I mean, as you, the beginning, I guess the water, we track a lot of projects and there's a lot of stuff and you can sort of lose the details and the cloud of points, but to be able to have a few of those points labeled for projects that are top of mind.
Or maybe the ones the watershed district is most known for. You know, the iron enhanced sand is always presented in photos.
Yeah, a good variety would be nice. So you can see what is a 2000, what is a 10, you know, what is, it's great.
I love that idea. I had a similar comment around just, you know, an extra appendix, just labeling some of these blue points on the curve would also be great. You know, either way, if you do it the way Stephanie does or an appendix, it does help solidify it. I mentioned this a little earlier. I did the calculation for inflation dollars, and so the increase in price actually beat the inflation rate, which is good. When you look at the number of dollars that we'd spent back in 2019 versus 2023, in terms of the amount of dollars spent per TP removed, we're doing better than inflation. Like it's not just inflation that's driving this. So I thought that was a really nice finding. Do you get where I'm going? Like the dollar was so dollar then is worth $1.92 now, and we beat that rate, which is nice.
Yes, it's.
Tell me I'm wrong.
No, you're seeing, but what's coming in there, what's factoring in there is the identification of projects that are more efficient projects that, because the cost of construction dollars are going up. That's not beating inflation, but the success that the watershed has had over the last several years of identifying more efficient projects. When you combine those two, that's where you're seeing.
It's really the celebration that I was trying to elevate.
Yeah.
if that didn't come across, I thought that was a really nice win there.
Okay, very juvenile, but I think it's funny you said we're celebrating the amount of TP removed.
Yeah, I've had similar things. I like it. Yeah, I love it.
Just a reminder too, as you see water quality projects from the targeted retrofit or capital improvements come in, we always include this information too. So you'll see the chart you'll see where
Thank you.
that particular project falls in the range. So that you can have that information as you're making decisions.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, in truth, it's, there were two different representations on like, here's the bottom and here's the top, so I think this was very helpful, so continue using it, that'd be great. I don't have any further questions. It was a great piece of information, lots of good work that goes into it, so thank you. Any other questions about the cost benefit analysis? Awesome, so moving to 10A, again, trying something new, so bear with me. The Maplewood Mall assessments, we've been maintaining, managing, working on that for years. And so this is just a really great comprehensive look with lots of research data points on the types of trees and everything else. Again, we have budget for some maintenance, but not everything in this project. And we're not asking for a request or approval or sending things to bid at this point. So just, that's at least the outcome that I've gathered. Agreed, that makes some sense. So do you want to start with questions on this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Take it away, Seth.
you know, we talked about this a little bit earlier, so I won't go back to those, but just kind of curious that it was good to read through. In the last 5 years, Davies has been under contract to provide maintenance for the rain gardens. And then looking back on that, actually, I think it was the last section of that project report, then it reported on kind of the status of those rain gardens. So my question is, given the fact that we have this regular routine, that should we continue to do what we're doing, or do we need to do something different? There was a lot of sediment, there's a lot of weed growth, infestation, etc.
Yeah, so I think they're doing a great job. Some of these where it says weed, it's a lot of goldenrod and some other native plants that have gotten a little aggressive. So trying to figure out, yes, do we, and then the other concern, if they remove all of those, we have to replant something. So, yeah, I mean, I think Davies done a great job as M&L prior. You know, they have staff out there, they're out there pretty frequently.
And there's a lot of sediment.
There's a lot of
That
sediment,
sediment is the pain in
yeah,
our.
and the mall
rain
does
gardens.
do a lot of sweeping, so they are keeping up with that. I would say the big thing is trash removal.
Yeah.
Our contractors are doing a lot of trash removal, it's just kind of a constant, but, yeah, so that would be something we talk about with this weeding and doing a big overhaul to get rid of all those maybe more aggressive species and then we'll plant it.
But, and so the previous discussion prior to this meeting was, what is the status of the mall? Do we continue doing what we're doing given the changing use of Maplewood Mall over the last decade?
Right. Yeah, and we don't see any concern, at least at this point in time, that the mall will go away or that they'll need to rip everything out. You know, we still see our investment is staying in that location. So, you know, it's providing a pretty significant benefit to Coleman Lake and to the Phelan chain. So at this point, I would say we see it as a benefit to continue the maintenance on it.
And the mall's committed, they're excited about it. They said they still get positive comments about it.
And it was good to hear that at least there's more visits from Bell.
Yeah.
It's helping.
We do frequent it, yes. I had a subsequent question on, you know, some of the learnings as I look at the paver construction on this particular one and thinking about some of the research that I've read about the permeable pavers. Are there solutions there as we think forward to future years and budgeting that we could go a different direction with those pavers? They do seem like they'd be more susceptible to picking up sediment, those types of things.
Yes, I think there's all things we'll talk about. It's hard here. You know, the mall does sweep, but I don't think they do anything special here.
Right.
I wasn't really part of this when it went in, but I think it was more of a demonstration here. So
That's
figuring
kinda-
out, which is funny because I was contacted by a paving contractor recently who was doing some paving at the mall and was asking if what we're gonna do out here. So we'll talk about that and see if,
Okay.
is it worth replacing, keeping up with that, or
Yeah,
Yeah.
because like reading through the effectiveness tests versus this and compared to some of the more recent examples I've seen with permeable areas, there's probably some other technologies to leverage.
Yeah, and that's why when you saw the paved drain application with the stewardship grant, we're seeing a lot more of that.
Yeah.
Because it's not just sweeping, it's vacuum.
Yeah.
Right.
For this.
Yeah, and
particular-
they're bigger, they're more weight bearing, you just get better wear and tear or less wind.
I see them, they're installed at Owasso,
Yeah.
over there.
Oh, that'd be great, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
So we do have an active installation of that product.
It's amazing how quickly these things iterate. So when I read some of these learnings, it's like, ooh, I wonder what that would have been like.
Yeah, this area, just permeable asphalt even. and
Yeah.
Paved drain for the access aisles to help offset those. That stuff's, at least in our experience, my experience holds up really well. Probably better than standard pavement even.
Yeah, this is like a great capstone. And so if we are looking at this, and we should talk about the technology as we go through. The only other subsequent question that I had following is there are certain claims that are highlighted in terms of like trees and the attrition rates for the past 5 years. As I look at these numbers, it's really hard for me to understand if what the reference point was with respect to that. Like, is this a meaningful one? Did we expect? It's more of a comment on what was our hypothesis when we put it? Did we expect them to work out the way that we did, or is this truly just we did it so we can learn more about those types that are going to be successful in this technique that we've adopted from Sweden?
I don't know if you have anything to start off. No, I do know, so Erin and I presented on this at the Water Resource Conference, and she had some good kind of conclusions, I guess. Maybe we can summarize that a little bit more.
I'm very happy receiving it as a memo out.
Sure,
out of
yeah,
it. It's just
yeah.
with the number of quantitative or the number of studies that were conducted, it made me start curious about what was the original hypothesis we set it
Yeah.
out. And I wasn't around
I mean,
when
my
that was done.
understanding at the time was that they were testing, testing on the number of these trees to see
That's fair. That's totally fair.
if they would thrive in this kind of environment. And
Okay.
That's right. There was quite a diverse range of species that were selected when they first went in, and
Looking at that
there were
tornado
some-
plot, I was like, oh my goodness.
there were some differing hypotheses in terms of at the time which species would do better in this type of harsh setting for trees. And so here I think that the unique thing, one of the unique outcomes here is you have kind of a 15-year retrospective is those tornado plots really show these are the species that do well, and these are the ones that, because we're looking to replace these, just money's not well spent.
Yeah, on the tree topic, it's highlighted that one of the findings seems to be the rooting volume is really important. And I guess I have kind of a two-part question there. Makes total sense. Is that assuming that all the tree species would have a similar rooting volume kind of need? Because I didn't see it broken out specific, by species, kind of on a comparison of rooting volume. It was more of a blank statement that the rooting volume was an important factor, and I think that's a great finding. But I think it may have some relationship to the species themselves.
It's an interesting question. I know that the as part of the review, the look was the depth, the volume that was there, the rooting depth versus trees that were doing better, but don't know if the data was broken down by species by rooting volume. If there's enough data points to make that meaningful conclusion, that's something I'll have to look into and get back to.
And then it's just really, me maybe at least, it's very stark. That southwest kind of glade, just It's a lot more light. I think the drainage might be, just the grade might be going in that direction, I'm not sure of that, but whereas the north is, you know, that they did much worse, trees did. Exposure wise, I would have expected that on the north, it would be a little cooler and then maybe it would not need the water and their wind depth they'd be able to sustain, but I guess what I really want to ask is why the difference in wooding volume on the southwest versus on north? Is there something in the soils sort of matrices?
Or were they just dug?
Yeah, or were they dug differently or what? And in the north just seems to be, I'm really surprised by that, and apparently it's due to, you know, this rooting depth thing. Well, why? Why were they not, you know, given the same advantage that the ones in the southwest?
There was connections where they had to connect to existing drains, I think there. So it was, there were site constraints in the north that limited the depth.
And maybe
that
utilities,
those-
I think.
Yeah, that those trenches could be constructed to, whereas in the south, they didn't have those same constraints weren't present. And that was one of the, Paige, if you said it, or Aaron said it at the Water Resources Conference, one of the big takeaways that all things equal, we'd want to go at least 4 feet or deeper, you know, and so that's one of the things that come out of this, you know, when you get to that 3 feet, we're seeing those trenches struggle.
Really good. Thank you very much. Just want to move us to the Washoe Basin lesson learned. For all of us here, I think we recall that in this particular case, the property owners did not want to pursue some of these flood reduction pieces. Just in the interest of time, again, can we focus on questions if you have questions on it? I know I have a couple that I just want to make pointed. Well, I'll just go ahead and jump in. In this particular regard, what I was curious about in the lessons learned section was, have we critically looked at, did we involve the property owners at the right time? That's really the question. And that if it was hinted at, danced around, not maybe driven home, it seems like we had invested a lot of money, energy around, these are like really good projects. And honestly, I was hook, line, and sinker. We're going to help a lot of people with this. Then just to get a no, just is deflating. I totally get it. So do we involve them appropriately at the right time? And how do we change for these type of ones to involve them early enough to where they feel like they're more part of the journey, as opposed to, these are really good for your people, by the way, you have risk for flooding. It just didn't yell out at me. I just want that to be, it's a clearly noted.
It's a very good question. I think, you know, to be direct, I think the short answer is no. I mean, clearly we got to the end, and when we got a response from the owner that was out of state, the answer was no, we're not interested in any of these projects. More broadly, we've been working with North Star Estates representatives, the local maintenance staff, the local point of contact on the site for these particular effort going back to 2020, 2021. But even prior to this effort, we had been in communication with their staff on site for drainage concerns, flooding concerns, dating back many years before that. And there had been an interest going, you know, support interest from them going into this project, and we had maintained those communications with them. And right up until we were ready to mobilize for site investigations, it was very supportive, yes. And then right when we were going to mobilize, that's when we paused and said, oh, wait. And looking back, one of the lessons learned is, even though we had that support, we should have been more direct in our communication with them to say, okay, do you have, you know, knowing that some of these manufactured housing developments are owned or operated by maybe not necessarily somebody that is local there. we can be more direct with our communication and to make sure that we have the person with authority to give us approval to do those. And that's what we'll
That
we'll need to
last
focus
statement
on
is-
as we.
Because they were partners really
Yeah.
through, especially during some of the wet years, if I recall. And so there's a difference between on-site versus the property owner itself.
Yep.
Okay, I just wanted to drill that home because it was there, but not explicit. That's what I wanted to.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think the on-site person, had a certain level of authority and, like
Absolutely,
we worked
yeah.
with them, but then when it got to
We're making, we needed
like
some fairly
agreement kind of
sizable
things, yeah.
changes.
Or just, even to be on site to investigate, then they were like, well, we better get our property owners.
Yeah, and we didn't spend too much money in this particular regard of going through planning. I understand, when you look at the dollar spent, but it was dollars spent where we, I think could have been successfully executed if we would have changed a couple of those little things or found the right authority.
Yeah,
I
think
would hope,
it's-
it's.
I was gonna
hindsight.
say,
In
you don't know.
hindsight, I don't know,
If they would have wanted.
but we could have stopped it a little earlier, right? If the property owner was like, hey,
Yeah, I think, well, we went through the feasibility for all of
Yeah.
our flood risk areas, so, we still have, all that information is valuable and will continue to be used.
no doubt. I'm just.
But yeah, I don't know.
But we've gone through it because I think we were almost at 90% plans with this. No, we were at 75.
No, we were
Even lower than
we
that.
were done with feasibility. We were just getting ready
That's what
to
it was.
collect information to start final design.
Okay.
So, and that's when we received this feedback. Now, I will say, in terms of next steps and where we left this project off, we didn't have support to do modifications to reduce flood risk within that development. We did share the information with both the local representative and the national, property management company, the city, St. Paul Regional Water, other property owners within the area, and we left them with a message that if there's an opportunity for future changes, we are very interested in reducing risk in this
In
part
this
of the
area.
watershed, and we'll continue to look for opportunities there. So
That's good. I really like it. I know in my other profession that even in feasibility study, bringing them along has helped. And I know now when they sit on it, or if we have another wet year,
Right.
we will
Yeah.
have some conversations.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Along the same lines, I was going to ask almost the same question though. St. Paul Water Resources said no as well. So I'm wondering if their kind of reaction was in part due to a similar timing thing, or if they were responding to something different. So is there a lesson learned, not just about the timing and involving the right people, but how the project was kind of scoped in terms of who it might affect? Is that part of this? Is that maybe why they backed away, or is it the same, that the timing, their involvement was not right?
yeah, they have a little bit different. They had a little bit different concern, certainly. Their primary concern, they've got two very large diameter distribution pipelines running through that easement. And so we had worked with them to talk to them about how we wanted to modify conveyance through their easement. And part of those discussions was we needed to provide them something to react to. And so when we got to the point where we had a drawing, we had a schematic for them to be able to react to, that's where they then wanted to hit the pause button. And so that's where we went back to the drawing board and looked at what could we do without their involvement, but still do something for manufactured housing development for North Star Estates. And we took a second concept to North Star Estates, and that's when we received the second feedback. So slightly different motivations, slightly different request for something to react to.
And St. Paul Regional Water was involved from very early on. In fact, before we even started that feasibility study, we worked with them on flood risk reduction projects up in the West Vadnais Lake area. And so they were very familiar with our work that we were doing, so it just came down to their infrastructure and their desires.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. I just wasn't clear on,
Yeah.
you know, what their sort of response was driven by, and so
Yeah.
that was helpful. Thank you.
I always find it interesting if you are open to a suggestion of running these lessons learned by those bodies. I do that at work periodically through, just to see if they agree with the findings. I don't need any answer at this point. I just like, it's nice to say, oh yeah, no, you're right. This is what I think too. So thank you so much. It's always important to learn from some of these things. So I really appreciate the thoughtfulness put into it, letting us ping it with questions.
Yeah.
In the interest of time, for D through F, they are scope summaries for information for work that we already have in budget for in partnership with BAR. If you do have questions, feel free to ask them, but keep in mind, we will see these more as we go, and they'll be just the starting of the work. So we'll see other things come through. So if you have questions on, and I'm just going to purposely group them, D through F, feel free to ask. I don't have questions outside of some educational pieces that I'll ping Tina about. That's really all I have. Nothing that would change my opinion on the scope summary. Stephanie, do you have anything?
No
or
questions.
Corinne?
I don't either.
Yes. Thank you guys very much. I think what is wonderful is now we can spend the time to go over a huge section on the administrative reports. Very important stuff. I want to be very clear about it, and truly what I think is a key priority, because there are people in this room that we have nominated as our folks to attend the watershed district meeting, so watersheds meeting, excuse me, and go over some of the resolutions. So I'm going to pass it to Tina to help walk us through this fairly important but dense packet.
Yeah, it was a big packet of materials that came from Minnesota Watersheds regarding the annual conference that's coming up in December. At this point, I know for sure Val, Mark, and Stephanie, and maybe even Ben will be there too. So it's that'd be awesome if you guys could all be there. One of the kind of items of business that we do need to do tonight is to appoint delegates. And what happens, for those that haven't been to the Minnesota Watersheds Conference before, is there's a business meeting, which is held on Friday morning. And that business meeting is where all the items that were in the packet are voted on by the delegation. So each watershed district and WMO has 2 delegates that they're available to vote at this conference. So the delegate appointment form just indicates who would be the 2 voting members that would represent Ramsey-Washington. So I don't know if we want to do that first. I think, Stephanie, you're not going to be there Friday morning, correct? Yeah. So I think at this point, I would suggest that Val and Mark be our delegates, and then we could put you down as an alternate too.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm waiting for the request for time off, so that's the smart move. Put those 2 on it.
Comfortable with that?
I have a kind of clarifying question.
Yeah.
If you're not a delegate, you're still able to sit and.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you still participate. And maybe they'll do it different this year, but usually it's just like everybody say aye kind of thing.
Sure.
So it's not a roll call thing, so.
That is my recollection.
Yeah. Yep, so unless they change that, because they did change it, right, the quorum. It looks like they're being a little more clear about what a quorum entails, but. And then you'll see in the bylaw changes that they're proposing to change actually the quorum. So okay, must have caught that and thought they wanted to change that, but so if you're good with that, I would take a motion to designate.
Do I have a motion to designate Val Isel and Mark Ryan. Sorry, I realized I just called you Mark. Oh, no.
It's all right.
As delegates to the Minnesota watersheds,
And then Ben is alternate.
and Ben is alternate.
So moved. Second.
Perfect. All in favor, say aye.
Hi.
All opposed, say-
Yeah, I'll fill.
yeah, you're good.
I'll fill out the form and have. it sent. I don't know if you want to just walk through some of these other items before we get to the resolution, get the agenda for the meeting. That includes all these items that are to come. They have last year's minutes so that you can review those. And then the draft financial statement, I didn't see anything in here that stood out to me as significant or a major change. The due structure's been the same for a couple of years and there was no increase in dues. So they're working within that due structure that they've approved previously.
So one
There's-
comment on the minutes, like there was a lot of hot debate on some of those resolutions that were summarized very succinctly.
Yeah, yeah, there can be a lot of discussion about the resolutions. Especially from members when they're presenting them.
Yeah. Okay, that just, it surprised me at the brevity.
Yeah,
Well, a couple of them last year were focused heavily on what would affect outstate watersheds. and,
Correct.
yeah, So,
It's
yeah.
it wasn't pertinent to your point, it was,
noticeable.
remember more, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The next item then there's the strategic plan update. So the strategic plan was adopted in 22. It's a 10-year plan that they have indicated that they would look at it yearly. So this is the annual review of that. And you'll see there's a number of changes. Again, I didn't see anything in here that was significant or anything I would oppose or, anything, so.
I don't understand when they make changes, like, for example, on increased communication about legislative, like, urge members to personally contact. I don't see a lot of value in some of the changes just
Yeah,
directly.
yeah. So the way they go through this is there's a subcommittee that is made up of manager, board members and administrators sit on that as well, so. There's a number of Minnesota watershed subcommittees and you'll hear about those and probably be asked to consider sitting on some of them at the caucus. So there's a lot going on this week, but there is a regional caucus where you can get together with all the board members from the metro area. And that's where you might discuss if there's any board, Minnesota Watersheds Board openings as well as committee representation opportunities. And I'll get more information on that. I think the caucus agendas come later, so I haven't seen that yet. But typically, I think last year I sent Val and Ben before they went up, like a kind of a rundown of the week and some places where you might want to be and talked about that too, sent me like, where should I go and what should I do?
It's very helpful.
Yeah, and then I can kind of run through that caucus information for you. So.
It might be a nice, would we have to, never mind.
Yeah.
Other questions?
I think that caucus is Thursday
morning.
Thursday.
Yeah.
Early.
Early one.
Thursday.
So it's a little heated at times.
Yeah, so that's early Thursday. But yeah, I can run through that ahead of the meetings so that you have some more information about that. A lot of topic, but I would say that if you, like I said, I don't have anything significant to pull out of the strategic plan, but if you read through it ahead of the, attending the meeting and you have any questions, let me know and I can discuss that with you. I'm gonna just head down to the legislative platform changes.
I have a couple questions.
Yeah, so this is a little bit different. It says at the 2024 annual conference, but it was the 2023 annual conference. The membership adopted its first legislative platform. So the way it used to work is they would pass all these resolutions, and there's basically just this book of resolutions that then our lobbyist, Rayvon at the time, would take and do his thing at the Capitol, and it was a little more nebulous. No one really knew. You know, there wasn't really a direction. It was just, here's all the things that we're all interested in, what's going on at the Capitol and how might it relate. Well, now we've hired a different firm too, so we're working. Minnesota Watersheds is working with a lobbyist group, and they've helped us adopt a better way of kind of synthesizing all that into some platform.
That's the LGN team, right?
Yeah, yep. Yeah, one of the changes for the annual meeting this year is that event on Tuesday evening, which is a presentation from them about, you know, how legislative platforms work and what this means for Minnesota Watersheds and how they take this information and use it at the Capitol, or with our state agencies too. So it's not just legislative. You see some of the resolutions are, you know, working with state agencies on different topics as well. So that is, if you're able to be up there on Tuesday evening.
I'm not able to be there Tuesday evening. I was curious if since it's new, you probably don't know, but is it something that materials could either be provided afterward, or is their presentation recorded, or?
Probably won't be recorded, but I am assuming any materials they would have, we can get to you.
Okay.
Yes.
The emerging issues section,
Yeah,
you mind just share a few words on that one? And there was another one specifically on like, oh, we're opposing certain things. I'm kind of curious about that. If you don't have the answers to those, I can ask questions as I attend, but those are sections that caught my eye.
yeah, I think I don't know for certain, but I'm gonna guess that the lobbyist group wanted to make sure that this was included, because things pop up and you go, whoa, wait a second, you know, this is important to watersheds. It might not be on our list at the moment, but we want them to stay on top of it, right? So
Well, I'm thinking like a couple years ago, PFAS pops up, and is that something that would have been an emerging issue? I'm just trying to figure out what qualifies as.
I would guess it would be something a legislative member is proposing a bill that
Understood. So that's what
might change how we function or how we
do
operate
things.
or funding, you know, like it would be something like that. Where
Okay.
like, wait a second.
It wasn't clear if it was a topical thing or if
Yeah.
it was.
I think it could probably be both, but.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think that second paragraph under emerging issues where it talks about in the event that, you know, something's introduced that could cause harm, we want to make sure that we're staying on top.
Yeah, introduced, caused harm. I was thinking more other things. Cool.
I think, you know, this is an adaptive management way of doing things. We're learning, so I would say, especially with bringing on a new lobbyist group and somebody that's kind of helping us formulate our thoughts around this instead of it was always a little scattered before. So I don't, you know, this is a working document that I think is helpful for them and helpful for our members like us, you guys, to kind of understand where the priorities might be.
It makes me curious if they could help Middle Snake Tamarack Watershed District. That's it. We'll get to that one. Sorry.
Yeah, we'll get to that resolution.
Kind of basic question, as board members, are we automatically enrolled as members of Minnesota Waters?
The district,
There's a cost.
there's a cost, right?
Yeah.
So we're members because you agree to pay the dues every year. Yeah, so you're not individual members, we're members.
They didn't have anything published on. I know it was a big topic last year on just getting additional participation across the state. I didn't see anything that stood out to me. That they've accomplished that goal.
They have actually, so yeah, that's, maybe we'll hear about it at
Maybe at
the,
the what,
at
which
the
is,
meeting, but,
yeah, no,
um,
I was
I think
curious.
we have, or she has, Jan, Minnesota Watersheds has re-signed, a handful, like 5 more watersheds that had stepped away for a while. So there's just a few, I think, left that are smaller, don't have staff.
Yeah.
But some of the big ones have rejoined.
And the quorum new change in the articles reads as we want people there.
Right.
That's really the
Yeah.
only takeaway I read.
Yeah, well, and I think there's a requirement for a certain number of people too, so that they can meet the quorum and actually pass the business, so. Yeah, so that was the proposed bylaws changes are next. So yeah, the quorum piece, a little bit of the, I think would say is the biggest change in there. Feels like they've done bylaws changes every year for a number of years, but that looks like it was the biggest thing that they were looking at. Again, I didn't see any major red flags there. So then we're at the resolutions. So the way the resolutions process works is watersheds can submit concerns or places where they want Minnesota watersheds to pursue either legislative changes or working with state agencies. It's the other category, or something, pursuing something in the Minnesota watersheds bylaws or our operations manual. So those are the 3 kind of categories. You'll see this resolution form that includes the background, and then also the issues, whether it applies to just that district, to 1 or 2 regions, or to the entire state. And then a resolution statement is written. All those resolutions that are submitted get sent to a committee. So it's a resolutions committee, where then you'll see their recommendation in the packet as well. Again, that committee is made up of managers and staff, administrators. I think I guess I don't know on the resolutions committee, typically there's 2 managers and 2 administrators from each region.
I was gonna ask do we have somebody who attends those?
We don't have, I don't think we have representation on the resolutions committee.
Yeah, I'm curious. I don't know the time commitment, just honestly. I was curious.
Yeah, each of the committees is a little different for time commitment. I sit on the events and education committee as an administrator. And in the past, I have done the awards committee, and I think I did the resolutions one year, but I have hopped around to some of the different committees. They really should include, I'll make sure I get a list of those so you can see what all the different committee options are.
Do you want us to ask questions on the resolutions, or?
Let me just overview them real quick,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then you can ask questions. So there was 13 resolutions that went to committee for recommendations. You'll see that some of them were recommends adoption, some were amended, some were saying no recommendation, more research is needed, which is basically they're not recommending they move forward at this time without more information and more time to kind of review. You'll see it numbers 1 through 4, kind of individual, topics, and then 5 through 12 are all related to a particular project and concern. From Maury at Middle Snake.
Tarmac.
Yeah, that's long name. Maury is also on the administrator's executive committee, so he did also express his concerns when he submitted these resolutions about this project. It is very specific to him, and there are other calculated funds, obviously, so I think that's why you know, he wanted to make sure that other watersheds were aware of his concerns. We don't have any Capris funds, I don't believe.
I was gonna ask about that. Well,
In our watershed, I did when I worked.
do
for
we
the
have
city of
any
Savage, we had
in the
one.
city, like in the city metroplex? I was Googling.
Savage.
There are some, okay,
Minnesota River, maybe.
thank you. Okay.
So they wouldn't necessarily apply to us as it relates specifically to Calcareous funds. But there are some, I would say, some themes around DNR, you know, working with the DNR that are coming out of this discussion. And actually that resolution 13 is also regarding DNR, and that I think was submitted because he knew of Maury's concerns and he wanted to be a little more succinct in his concern. And that again is a very project specific concern, but it does lead to a bigger question around
How, I don't know, maybe it's either time. How do we kind of respond or project to this difference?
Yeah.
Kind of region 3 versus if they're region 1 or whatever, that outstate metro.
Yeah, I think when there's resolutions that maybe don't directly apply, but there's, you know, kind of you can feel that there's support in that area or that region, that I think it's helpful to support, right? To support that, because if there's a metro issue, we'd like them to help us, you know, support that too as a concern of ours. So, you know, as long as it's not something that's real controversial that we think is not beneficial, or maybe it goes against something that we would be benefiting from. I mean, I think it's generally healthy to support them in their endeavors to, for instance, there was a big push for many years for the outstate watersheds to be able to levy more than 250 or up to 250,000 before they, getting that wrong. It was 250. Now it's at 500,000. But for years, they were limited to how much they could levy for their general fund budgets. And so, you know, and we're not bound by that same restriction in the metro area. So it was, but I think it was important that we supported them to, you know, be able to get that. So,
I think last year too, in conversations in preparation for this, we are the board because we can think critically about some of these resolutions. So just in addition to supporting, if it makes sense, why stop it?
And committee's also done a lot of vetting, that's why they provide you recommendations, unless you have a strong feeling otherwise.
I mean, I only had one that I had questions on in terms of support versus not.
sure. Yeah, I think, I mean, taking Maury's ones off the table, I think, you know, if you support, I would recommend supporting as the committee has recommended as well. But I didn't have any changes outside of what they recommended. And that would be for all of them actually, but I was just thought for the first 4, and I think 13 as well, they do apply there, they could apply to us as well. Obviously, number 1, you know, working with the state agencies to implement chloride reduction.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Work that's, you know, kind of a no-brainer to work with the PCA and that. So I think I didn't have any concerns about that one. The second one, something we've talked about quite a bit, about posting our public notices and the archaic nature of.
This one I had a question on this one, because I thought it was I'm gonna use this word incorrectly, but either a law or we have to publish in newspapers, if I recall.
Yeah.
And I didn't think anything precluded us from putting it anywhere else, right? We can put it, we have to do it in the newspaper, we have Facebook announcements, we have webpage announcements. And so I just didn't know what is the added value in this particular resolution with respect to that.
I read it as they want just to bypass the paper, like allow us just to do an online presence.
There's some nice,
That's correct. Yeah.
there's some nice tradition in doing the paper, just frankly,
I think, you know, and we've been.
if it's a
through-
cost thing. Then
Yes, and it is. I mean, that's really, I think, well, the fact that you have to pay the money.
Yeah.
And
By law, you have to pay.
by law, you have to include it, and we're losing our local papers, right? We went through this years
Yeah.
ago where we just all of our local papers were disappearing, so we weren't getting the reach that we needed, or actually it's required. So we went to the Pioneer Press, right? And that is quite costly actually for, for these publications. Thankfully we have the Pioneer Press that does cover our area, but the thought is it's probably more effective and less costly too. And this is kind of like the open meeting law changes, like it's not just us that this is impacted by, it's the cities, the counties, there's a lot of other entities that.
Well, if I recall in
also
that open
affect
meeting
them.
law one, what we ended up saying is we will direct the lobbyists to go and pursue or champion this, if I recall correctly.
I think it was, work
I
with
can't
the League of
remember the word.
Minnesota cities and counties.
Yeah,
to,
that's what it was.
because that again is a little bit, this and I think actually is to change the watershed, just the watershed law section, but.
Do we know, on the notices, that resolution, do we know if there's similar statutory language for cities, counties?
Yeah, they have the same, I guess
I
Tracy
mean,
maybe. you
are
can
they,
look at that.
the statutes explicitly say publish in a newspaper?
Right, for the cities and counties, they're required to.
Yeah, I mean, it really, it's,
Oh,
Ooh, you're muted.
just got muted again.
oh, I thought I got off. Sorry, am I there? Okay, good.
Yep, you're here.
All right, there's just a real push. The courts too, I mean, we're just getting where it's just not how people are finding things, right? If they want to know if there's a watershed meeting, they are getting on your website. They're looking for you there. I mean, I'm not pulling out the Pioneer Press. And I know it's nice to keep the business of the paper going, but in practical sense, that's just not how people are finding out about things anymore. So there has been a push. There was a little bit of reprieve during COVID. It's back, probate court, they're still publishing notices to see if there's creditors that, are owed money by the decedent. So it's still happening, but the reality is it's just not how people are finding out about things. So if we can get some changes to that, it's really practical. If our goal is to really get so people can find us and know what's going on, it's just not the way that's really happening.
Very much open meeting laws. I'm in support of this particular direction. I just don't know if it's something that we're going to get immediate effect or return on, frankly. And so I was just curious.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think to your point, Val, even though it's required to be in the paper, we put it on our website.
We do anyway.
post it on our door,
we have the luxury of not being as limited to some of our rural partners, and so I think this is more. I think it's the right move to go, and it's actually just modernizing something that should have been modernized a long time ago. I just was curious if this will end up like the meeting law one, where it's still on our resolutions that we support. It hasn't actually changed anything, and so it's curious.
Yeah.
The third one is regarding the Wetland Conservation Act. This is something I think Nicole, I don't know if she's available to hop on or if she's read this yet, but when we're not the LGU, for instance, if they have a technical evaluation panel, they're not required to include us. Oftentimes they do, I would say. Nicole, I think, is that true? I have to say that, but.
Yeah.
Yeah. But they're not required. And so if you have an LGU that's not willing to include them, then the watershed is left out of that process. So I think this is an important one. You'll see that it was submitted by somebody in the metropolitan area, but the recommendation is to actually remove that. So it's just statewide.
This is a big reason why I want to learn more about the WACA stuff.
Yeah.
I just don't know enough. It makes perfect sense in the write-up. I just was like, oh, I should take the time to learn about it.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys want the same kind of treatment. I was going to ask some questions to Tina about the WACA and the policies and stuff like that. If you know about it.
Yeah, I have a pretty good understanding of it, so it
Well, I
makes
could
sense
also-
to me, so I don't I don't see any issues with resolution. I think it makes sense. We're in a good shape
We are.
because of our cooperation with St. Paul, but I can see where other districts may not be, so.
Yeah.
Let's kind of,
I guess
Cover,
it
that's
would
really
be
good, that's good.
MinDOT too, because we're not the LGU for MinDOT, WACA either, so
yeah, do we have many, we might have some,
Yeah, we
yeah,
do.
I suppose.
pretty much anytime they do. a
35,
project.
yeah,
I was about to say,
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah, well, involved,
Okay.
yeah,
We have to leave, we can keep going.
yeah.
Yeah, I would say St. Paul includes us on almost every TEP related thing, but not MinDOT. I usually don't know about that until a project comes through in our area.
Yeah, so actually, that's probably a better example of where it would be beneficial to be involved early.
Oh, good. So this could help us
Mhm.
in that particular,
Mhm.
that's good to know. Thank you.
Yes, so the fourth one is regarding buying property for flood risk reduction, which I think is timely. We've
Mhm.
talked about, well, I mean, we've done our feasibility studies that exclude the buyout of property, but there's, you know, opportunities at times that can come up for this. Problem is that when you get federal funds from the hazard mitigation program, you're not, it has to stay in public ownership when you use those funds. So you're not allowed to sell the property back for private use. So the question here, or the concern is, you know, that there could be some really great flood risk projects that could use the grant funds, remove people from flood risk, but then you can't build on it again, right? Or maybe it's, you know, using that money to flood proof or whatever it is, but you,
Yeah,
can't do this.
this one came from outstate.
Yep.
And they're proposing that it be statewide. I would think that it is appropriate to be statewide. I can see where there is probably a difference between, you know, metro and outstate, where metro, I think it's, you know, primarily if you have land, you want to
Yeah.
retain the ability to potentially develop.
Right.
In the outstate, there are, you know, probably a large number of properties that are not necessarily of interest for development, but are retained for other, you know, other purposes. And that, you know, could be certainly in private holdings. I don't know if it'd be agricultural or recreational or in other types of uses that is not exclusive to develop. So I don't know, I think it makes sense.
Yeah, I can think of a couple examples, for instance, on Tanner's Lake where there's a home and, you know, it's one home, you know, amongst, so you'd have, not that it would be a bad thing to keep it in, you know, maybe we remove the structure because it's so low, we can't do anything else. You know, but it's just one little piece, square of property, and we don't necessarily want to own that. Maybe the city is not interested in owning this, you know, one parcel, where it might make sense to be able to sell it back. But, and we could do that, it's just not use grant funds, federal grant funds to do that.
Yeah, I was curious on how it applies, so thank you for that, Tanner. Because this one I flagged as like, oh, this might help us in some ways. I just wasn't clear to me.
Yeah, I think, you know, I've talked to John Henson at Valley Branch Watershed District where they had some significant buyout plans. And this might have helped, you know, would have helped them as well. So I don't know if you have anything to add to that. Yeah.
That's right.
Very cool. Middle Snake, Tamarack.
Yeah, I think, I don't really know if there's anything else to say about those other than, it doesn't necessarily apply to us. You know, as specific to calcareous funds, maybe there is some intertwining of, like I said, working with the DNR on projects that might apply to different other things besides that, but, you'll see that he just really had a bad experience on this.
That the one comment that I would put forth, and I don't think it makes any difference to how we would choose to support the resolution, but it seems like this is, I haven't been in the meeting previously, haven't, you know, at all, but there is in another part of the resolutions section, older resolutions that kind of are no
Yeah.
longer valid.
Mhm.
And I saw, was it one or two of those older ones that relate to calcareous fence? And it's like, man, I just keep hammering that. So whatever.
Yeah, I think in some of these cases too, like, I think Minnesota watersheds might decide that this is just something they maybe isn't legislative, but they want, well, obviously this is working with the DNR too. So a lot of this is, you know, so maybe Jan would decide to, with the board, for it to, work with the watershed and the DNR, maybe try and do some resolution outside of
This
a
kind of
bigger
resolution.
project. Yeah.
But the only one that said no recommendations, more research needed, that I was curious about is the resolution 12 out of all of them. It's like, hey, can we, Minnesota Watershed support some sort of group that comes together and starts looking at what it means? I was surprised that came across as no recommendation, because that seems like part of these resolutions is ensuring that the person proposing them feels heard.
Right.
Looking at where these are going to go, I think it's going to be a very contested section.
Mhm.
With lots of opinion, which is always great. But this seems like, oh yeah, if we got together and Minnesota Watersheds helped coordinate, maybe it's just Jan. I doubt this much.
Yeah, you know, I'm sure there's a lot left on the table, but I don't know if they have minutes. I should check into that, because I don't, you know, just saying
Yeah,
more
like,
information, I don't know what the.
No
decision
recommendation,
is.
more research needed. It's like, well, do you need research to do research? Because that's effectively how I'm reading that resolution. It's like, can we?
So I'll see if I can find if there's minutes or not for those. who can
That's the only
indicate
one that I was like,
Yeah.
that's more reasonable. Like, let's try to be helpful here, as opposed to all the other earlier ones that
Right.
seem to mandate to the DNR what to do.
Just, you know, in the resolutions committee, each of the proposers of the resolutions is there to provide background and give some more information.
I'm very excited to see how that goes.
Yeah. The last one then is from the Shell Rock River Watershed District, regarding the DNRs, and EAW requirements. Again, this was regarding a specific project, but it was significant and it could apply to a project that the watershed in the future. It's just at this point, there's no deadline required for the DNR to act on permits when there's an EAW involved.
This seems like a really important one, honestly, because I think we'll encounter it.
I think that there's been some cases where, and maybe in the past resolutions, it should still be in there, is, you know, like the DNR doesn't have to get watershed permits, or, you know, there's this idea that it's not treated the same, you know, kind of back and forth on that. And so this is that, you know, well, we have to abide by the 60-day rule. Why don't they have to abide by the 60-day rule? Especially in a specific case like this, where they're going through a significant process. The EAW process is significant. You know, so there's already a timeline involved that can extend a project, and then to not have them. And in this case, I know, you know, speaking with Andy about this project in particular, that it was quite, I mean, we're talking months and months and months of time waiting for the DNR to finish their review.
Is it up to a year, if I remember that? I mean, I thought last year we talked about having DNR also have time limits with respect to grants, or finding some way of providing feedback on grants more quickly. But I don't remember where that, grant funding, there it is.
Yeah.
Because this one is another one of those, we're going to support amending it, doesn't mean it will occur.
Yeah, I mean, what we're supporting is the idea that it would go on
To lobby it.
on a list of topics. Again, this is something that requires, I suppose, legislative effort to include that 60-day deadline, but it also is, you know, some one-on-one time with the DNR.
I just don't
which
see,
I already know is happening.
I just don't see what incentivizes the DNR to absorb another time requirement.
I mean, they won't, right, and that's, unless there's some pressure from a larger contingency, and that's the benefit, I guess, of the resolutions, right? It's not just Shell Rock going and saying,
Yeah.
you gotta do this. It's a conglomerate of watersheds saying that we support that,
Which is important.
to have
I
better
like that.
relationships and partnerships. The last one.
So I'm in support of all of them, except for I'm just curious about the 12, but I can support where that resolution goes. I don't know how others feel. They seem reasonable, the ones that recommended.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with, well, I don't have a problem with really any of them. I
Yeah.
think I would be more silent on some of them.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, which is fair, and the process at the business meeting is, the proposer, I think, has some time.
Yeah, and then they open it to
They had
comments.
did they have two mics, like a for and against kind of?
Oh, the one that Ben and I were at, they used the same
They
mic.
have the same mic and you got.
And they just rotated.
Wanted to speak on it and
Yeah,
then they kind of went around with general approval and. Yeah,
in truth, what I.
it wasn't the most streamlined process.
I do think it's advantageous of us to speak when important aspects are there, and in truth, I think the general direction of most of those were going the way that Ben and I were very in support of.
Yeah. We talk about these at our administrators meeting on Tuesday as well, and so then I can update you. If there's anything that comes out of that.
That would be great.
meeting next week.
Oof.
Any other questions about the conference, business meeting?
I read through the Active Minnesota water resolutions, which I really appreciated the way this was laid out. What is unclear in my mind is when push comes to shove, we can't lobby all of these all the time. So I assume the group that's doing this are going to prioritize. Part of that's because of the sunset. I see that now, but are there ones that we push harder than others?
So that's part of that platform, that legislative platform. right?
Oh,
So
on
they
Tuesday when they're gonna.
So they pull up these resolutions into that platform, so the one
Okay.
that was up above,
Yeah.
they'll have some reference to resolution numbers too.
Okay.
But yes, as part of that Tuesday night meeting, they're gonna talk about that, cause that's just not been a real solid process to date, so I think
I mean, just
they're gonna try and.
rough eyeball, it's over 20.
Yeah.
Right, so.
Yeah, right. And then it's just really what's the hot topic of the day, that comes up, so. Yeah, I think some of the interesting thing for me is legislative versus working with state agencies and what, the differences, because the lobbyists are more on the legislative changes, but then Minnesota watershed staff and are more on the partnerships with our state agencies.
This was very comprehensive. Thank you for walking us through it. So any insights that you guys, as you help us support you, let us know if there's other things you want us to ensure that we voice and make clear.
Yep, and then I will again provide some walk through the event for you before you head up to the ballot later into this one.
Very cool. Super excited about the shoreline assessment. If we have to push that to 2025, we should talk.
Yeah, I mean, it'll come over this winter time.
That's kind of what I figured.
Yeah.
All right, transitioning to the, any further questions? I'm sorry. Transitioning to the project and program status reports. I read through it and there really wasn't anything that called the question in my eyes, but if you guys have questions, please ask them. I love the pictures on the capital improvements. That was
Good. Just again, a request to get a copy of the presentation for the street sweeping.
Oh, I did send that to you.
Yeah, it's just wonderful if we are in an opportunity to meet other groups who may have heard of your work, it would just be kind of nice homework for you to know what what was discussed.
Yeah, I actually kind of like that idea. Maybe there's something where, hey, we gave these presentations over the year. Here's just a quick summary that would be helpful for you, or just send us the content.
Yeah, so I had the summary in the last month's packet, but I think, seeing the presentation
Yeah.
might be useful.
Yeah.
And we can set the maple and all.
Come on, Paige, inclusivity. Just kidding. Any questions on the project statuses?
Near the end. Almost there, I think. State's done, yeah. I'm just curious, the belt line, outfall, there's not a lot discussed here. There hasn't been a lot of activity apparently. I think Bar it met the contractor in site and kind of walked through some things. Is there anything that is kind of like red flags? Or is there anything that is, so that's one question. The other question is that because it's such a large project and it really does need to kind of have a timing factor, is it on schedule? Is it where you think it needs to be?
Right now, I think we are on schedule. No red flags. The first a problem we found is there's anchors tied back to the river wall called dead men. Every 25-ish feet or so. Picture a 2-inch round steel bar that goes from the river wall attached back to a piece of, say, 3-foot by 4-foot piece of concrete along the way. Those pieces of concrete are right next to our pipe and kind of preventing us from some sheet piling. So we're working with the Port Authority right now to expose some of those pieces to see if we can move it. They're looking to be significantly larger, where maybe they just tied a ribbon of concrete, a continuous, maybe it's 30 feet long, and we might be able to just to trim a little bit about that. So basically we're working with the Port Authority to figure out what we can do with these dead men and go from there. So we're still on track, but we just found something on initial pothole digging that was a little unexpected.
Thank you.
I think we talked about this earlier. Just for the communication one, can you do the last month versus this month?
Yep, I forgot to tell her that before she finished.
Yes, that's it. Very cool. Any further questions? Want to hit manager comments really quickly. So there are the awards banquets that's coming up. So please, I believe the RSVP is by this Friday, if I'm remembering correctly. Also keep in mind, we have a very important retiree coming up. We can, I think we should do our best to find ways to celebrate. So please reach out on the RSVP on the awards, and then let team know if you're coming to the celebration. Per se.
Yeah. I do have one item too. Matt's not here tonight. He had a work commitment that he happened at the same time, but he did say I could let you know that he has chosen not to apply for his next term. His term is up at the end of February. And actually the county's process now starts in September for our opening for our appointment. So they've actually already appointed somebody for Matt's replacement. Matt will still continue until February. And then her name's Gabby. She will start in March. So I haven't reached out. They just appointed her yesterday. So I will reach out, and I'm assuming she might want to come to some meetings ahead of time just to get the lay of the land. And I'll be starting some onboarding with her as well. But I'll see when she can attend a meeting and introduce herself.
Well, I'm excited about, so I think the next time I'm going to see all of you is actually at the conference or at the party, one of the two. Yeah, the time's flying. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
I'll second that.
Wonderful. So thank you all, and we'll see you soon.
Good night, thanks.